When I hear men and women can't just be friends, my radar goes off from experience. My guy friends prepared me for marriage, and none ever pursued me sexually or disrespected me in any way that made me question if this relationship was safe, outside of God using them to challenge me to be a better woman altogether. Let's go ahead and get into this topic. I was asked recently on Instagram about platonic relationships and if it's possible for men and women to be friends. I'm about to celebrate 1 year married, and in 2020, until I got married in 23, the Lord intentional about sending men into my life to shift a dynamic. I grew up between two parents' households, and I've seen the ins and outs of that experience. I can only share my experience and my testimony, giving you a different perspective in hopes that you will sit with yourself and sit with God and reflect on some of the heart, HEART, things coming up as we're having this conversation. Because I was a product of divorce, I perverted protection. If a father gives purpose, provision, and protection, I sought out males to be like big brothers, to be that protective nature, because not having my dad in the house, it communicated with me who's gonna keep us safe, who's gonna keep mom safe. I clung to men to protect, not for love, which is why I was able to keep my virginity until I got married. I am not promiscuous. I did not struggle with lust, masturbation, or pornography. Anger and shame are things I've had to walk through. When it came to friendships, I had a lot of guy friends. I got along with everybody, but there was something about feeling safe and protected with men. I can look back over my life and see how God allowed me to be safe with the men in my life. People assumed I liked, or there was a secret relationship going on, but I can testify and say that unless I said, hey, I like this person, or I was talking to this individual, there was nothing more, nothing less going on. Towards my senior year of college, when I decided to say yes to God and surrender and rededicate my life, the Lord started to show me how I had this perverted perspective of men and how I had not seen healthy friendship and boundaries, how I had not seen healthy dynamics of men who were walking in their identity as God-fearing. God started to shift that paradigm by removing before he could release. I realized that Mark 10:29-30 says, truly I say to you, leave behind mother, brother, father, sister, land, children, and I will give it back to you 100 times fold in this age with persecution and in the age to come. Please go and look that verse up. I remember the Lord showing me how our parents, our siblings, the people that are in our life can only be so much, and where they fall short, God makes up for the rest by bringing people into our life. The Lord started to surround me with God-fearing men. One of my friends, Tyler, God was so strategic. When my internship ended at Elevation, the Lord sent me home for 3 years to walk out what he had taught me in my wilderness and healing season. I avoided Tyler for months because he reminded me of the men of my past. If I have to give a stereotype before getting to know him, it was like, oh, this is the typical type of guy I find myself in friendship with. Sometimes in those friendships, I felt I was giving more than received, where I was constantly checking and making sure they were okay. It was not always reciprocal. I was giving of myself at the expense of myself. I learned early I was a very high performer. I was the type of person who used my gifts thinking that that could keep some relationships. So giving of my graphic design skills or buying gifts, I clung to men for protection. There was some element of perversion that still took place where I felt like I had to be friends with them and I had to fight for this relationship, not realizing that relationships are give and take and should be reciprocated. As I pour, they should pour back into me. But sometimes people don't have things to give, and sometimes we have to be to people what we desire, but that is from a different heart posture and a totally different perspective. When Tyler came into my life, we went to the same church, connected through mutual friends that started the conversation. I remember the Lord showing me very very specifically that he was called in my life to show me what it was like to have a male friend, that there was no hidden agenda, that it was strictly what it is, and would help me walk out vulnerability and sanctification required before my husband came. Often we talk about, as women, being in position to be found, and sometimes being in position starts by God doing the heart work within us by bringing people into our life that can start that iron sharpens iron. And friendships are very vital. You need to have a male perspective. God created us to do life together and in community. I'm sorry that culture, because people lack boundaries, have hidden motives, and don't express expectations up front, that it has created this mess of a culture that is overly sexualized and perverted when it comes to lust. And I believe that God is awakening men and women to walk in freedom and purity together, where that's my brother and my husband can get to know him. There isn't this upper hand or hidden thing, this secret sin or secret motive. My husband can meet my guy friends, which has shifted. I went from having a lot to having like 3 to 4 core. And even with that, when you get married, new boundaries have to be set. If your husband cannot be friends or be cool with, or at least be aware of who this guy is and have a conversation, it might be time to reevaluate those boundaries. You have to have clear motives for who you are, your personality type, your upbringing. You have to be honest with yourself when making friends with the opposite sex. Be transparent and vulnerable with God, because God can't heal what we don't reveal. God brings people into our life to make us more like him. Check your motive. What is your reason for being friends with this individual? Challenge yourself to stop looking at somebody as just a piece of meat. Check your heart, because you should be able to have godly brothers in the faith, godly sisters in the faith if you are a male, and it be nothing more, nothing less than you two running on kingdom assignment together to advance the kingdom in a platonic way. So after you check your motives, you got to put boundaries in place, like when and how you're talking to this individual. Define friendships. I put people in the 3, the 12, the crowd. Sometimes those in the 3 go to the 12, and sometimes those in the 12 go back to the crowd. No hard feelings, and it's not treating them less, and it's not being rude when we see each other if we outgrow each other. It's saying you respect their time and boundaries, even if you two are walking separate. When God puts them on your heart, you pray for them and bless them. Seasons change, relationships change. You have to be willing to have a conversation with your spouse and be okay with how they feel. And sometimes you have to bring in those wise counsels, but boundaries need to be communicated, especially once motives have been expressed. You really got to make sure that you don't have hidden expectations of how this person should show up for you. You need emotional intelligence to communicate what you need. My husband is my best friend and triumphs all the other guys in my life, and it's no love lost because, for example, Tyler, still my brother, love him, pray for him, talk to him as life allows, but your spouse becomes that center focus, and all the individuals that God has used to get you to this point, you thank God for them, and now you set these new boundaries so it can function in a healthy dynamic. You allow your spouse to take that center role. I still believe you should have male friends. However, it has to be clear motives and new boundaries expressed once you get married. You need to work that dynamic out with your partner, and you need to make sure that everybody is on the same page. And having to have this conversation with my husband and being honest about these things, the men in my life that I am solid with, my husband knows, has met, and we sat down recently when we went to Vegas. My husband met one of my college friends, and though him and I maybe talk 3 times a year or as the Lord leads in the season that is needed, because there may be moments where your friend of the opposite sex needs you to pray for them and needs you to even connect with their significant other as the time leads. Like, the Lord will guide and show you. And I just thank God for my husband. I thank God for my male friends. Like, I am who I am because of the people that have poured into me. I am not self-made. I am God-made by way of the community He placed me with. I I am a intergenerational person. I have friends as old as 70, 80, and as young as 25. So I don't right now have anyone younger than that, but who knows what the seasons may bring as it happens. Like one of my bestest sister friends, she's 42, 43. Like, let's be freaking for real, okay? Like, God doesn't allow age to keep us from genuine friendships. I think we are the hindrances of being able to experience the fullness and joy through community, because we allow trauma and experiences to say, oh, I don't need no new friends. I'm better off being a loner. Baby, I cannot be alone. I need people in my life. I give people an opportunity to be a safe space. What happens when you are to be that corrective experience, but you withdraw because you're offended when God needs you to stand in it and have tough conversations? The person who didn't respect your boundaries never had anybody set boundaries or express the importance of it. I am a champion of friends and community. I am a champion of having male friends. As a woman, you need it. Your husband, your partner, your spouse needs friends of the opposite sex with boundaries, clear motives expressed, and clear expectations. We got to be honest with ourselves about ourselves. We got to do what the Bible says and live the life to the fullness and not bound because of secret sins and perversions. And so for me, didn't pervert love. I perverted protection. So I didn't need a man to affirm me. My dad and mom did a wonderful job at that growing up. And I didn't grow up not feeling seen. Maybe I didn't feel heard because I didn't know how to communicate without being aggressive or emotional. People couldn't understand me. Through my male friendships, specifically Tyler, I learned I didn't have a follow through, or I would start and stop things. I withdrew and let things sweep under the rug when we needed to address it heads on, or maybe I came off too strong where he needed time to reflect and come back so that he could spend time with the Lord and then come to me in the proper heart posture so that I could receive it and hear it. My guy friends are the best thing that happened to me leading up to my husband. And now my husband is the best thing that happened to me because I was able to receive his presence and I was able to take everything I learned in the last season to venture further who I am becoming. And I can apply all that I learned in this relationship. But of course, a covenant relationship when it comes to, because your friendships can be covenant relationships. Look at Jonathan and David. But a intimate covenant relationship between a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, this is a whole different ball game. This is a whole nother level of intimacy. Into me, you see a whole level of reflecting each other's shortcomings and strengths. Where I lack, he's successful, and vice versa. We thank God that God knew all of these guys leading up to this moment would prepare me for the man of my now. I thank God that God knows what we need, even when we don't. Even in those seasons, knowing the spouse is coming and having to have the maturity to not make this individual be what God never ordained. The worst thing you can do is try to make somebody be what God never said. You want that individual to be what God needs for you with clear expectations and motives expressed up front, okay? So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop it in the comments. I'm down to expand on this. We can be friends. You can be friends with the opposite sex as long as you have clear motives, no hidden agendas, clear expectations, and communicated boundaries. You shouldn't be talking to this individual after 9 o'clock, especially if you know where you fall short and where the enemy tries to play with your mind. Don't let the culture and the enemy punk you out of genuine connection because people who have lacked self-control are trying to speak into a subject that they don't have authority. And the Bible says the blind can't lead the blind unless we fall into a ditch. Don't seek wisdom and insight from people who haven't walked in a level of freedom or success in that area, and they're trauma dumping on you because it is where they fall short. And we all fall short, but the difference is we have to carry a repentant heart and a heart that is being transformed. One way to know somebody is walking with the Lord is the fruit that they reflect. Are they showing love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness and self-control, and you have to exhibit all those fruits, okay? It's just not a one, oh, I got love, but you don't have self-control. The evidence of the Spirit, as stated in Galatians 5, is the fruit of the Spirit. It's all one. That is a true testament to if you should listen to the person speaking. Test the fruit. Test my fruit, period. Take what I say to God. Ask him to reveal the truth. Walk out your salvation with fear and trembling. Run your race well with the people God has called you to run with. Because let me tell you something. There have been so many brothers in the faith, fathers in the faith, that helped me have a better perspective on how to relate with my husband and the men in my life. And I thank God that their wives didn't walk in suspicion. Too many of us grow up in a culture where you can't even say anything to a man without body thinking it's suspicious. Ain't nobody got time for that. We have to do this life together, intentional, in love and purity. For those who are new, my name is Janae Carly. Hit the subscribe button. My goal is to help us grow in life, faith, and business. See you next week. Holla.